which is the rates and fees issues for the emergency budget. And let me check that I have Andrew Duncan and Eric Wen online. Are you both there, Andrew and Eric?
I'm here, Your Worship.
Okay, you're the key person on this. We've workshopped this, but there may be further questions and comments on it. But if you'd like just to quickly indicate what the paper does, and in the meantime, I'll move and I'll just ask for a seconder for the recommendation on this. I think is that Desley in the background I hear?
Sorry, point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Just briefly, I've got an amendment to 10A, F and to B. I'm just wondering about the process. Do I put that now or what?
Yeah, we'll if we move the recommendation, it may be one that the mover and the seconder would be happy to accept. This
Okay.
relates to including in recommendation AF the wording include a new targeted rate for One Walk with BID, which it currently is, and Central Park Henderson.
Yeah.
So we'll put that up. Let me just hear from Andrew first. If there's no problems with that, then we can just absorb that in the recommendation. But I'm not familiar with the arguments around it, and Andrew more likely is. And then I'll call on you first, Shane, to speak to that. So Andrew, if I can ask you to lead off on your presentation, please.
Thank you. So this report's seeking decisions on some minor changes to rates and fees and charges. The consultation took place in February and March, and it includes some proposals to cover costs with increases to waste rates, changes to the rural sewerage service, and new swimming pool fencing targeted rate, amongst other things. The feedback was in support of all the proposals from both the community and the local boards, nearly all of them. The feedback was provided before COVID-19, but the trade-offs for the community and decision makers remain the same. These are all core and regulatory services where the choice for you is to set charges as user pays, to increase general rates, or to make additional savings. A couple of changes from the original proposals. Because of COVID-19, we're not going to recommend the introduction of an international visitor entry fee in the Botanic Gardens. And in response to feedback, we're going to make some adjustments to the resource consent fees for large marine farms. On the good question that Councillor Henderson raises about our resolutions, Resolution 10B is having us consult again on the proposal to establish the Central Park Henderson bid. Because of COVID-19, the ballot of the businesses didn't get a 25% return required in our policy, but most of the people responding were supporting the establishment of the bid. We're recommending that rather than do a reballot, we consult again as part of the emergency budget. We need to do this because to meet the balance of our policy and rating legislative requirements. When we implement B, that's to consult again on the Central Park Henderson bid, we will include the rate in the draft funding impact statement, and that's a requirement of consultation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Andrew. Shane Henderson, if I can ask you to lead off with maybe an explanatory comment around that.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I've got comments and questions actually on this. I'll just briefly, as brief as I can, address the issue. So the Central Park Henderson business community has been consulted at least 3 times on this bid establishment. There's been 2 votes. There's been a consultation through our processes right here. And I believe it's also been through the local board plan when I was the chair. So the consultation has been extensive. So I think we're not discharging an obligation here. The other thing I've got to point out is the cost and the lack of focus involved in consulting again. So especially in terms of the focus, I want us to focus on the emergency budget and some of the big hard decisions that will be affecting all of our communities, and I don't want any distractions on that, and we want to minimise as much as possible that we consult on to that end so that people are talking about the real financial issues. I'll point out that there has been a mandate to pass this bid vote, and the turnout was almost there, and it would have got there without COVID. And so I guess in the form of a question, can I ask questions, Mr. Mayor? Sorry, I'll just seek your guidance.
Yes, no problem. We'll run comments and questions together here.
So I've got 3 questions. So I think it's very important to get the figures on the votes and the turnout. My understanding of the turnout was 23.4% when we need to get 25. So we're 1.6% short. I need to know the percentage of the yes vote. Because I think you'll find that if all those 1.6% turned out and voted no, it still would have passed pretty handily. But I'd like the figures on that. That's my first question. The second question is the policy allows for exceptional circumstances with that turnout, and I would argue fairly strongly that COVID plus the mandate that I've said both amount to exceptional circumstances, and therefore there is no handcuff on us putting the bid vote in that the community want. And the third and final question is I want more details on any proposed consultation, but the first 2 are the big questions. So could I get an answer on those?
Councillor Henderson, I missed the first part of the question. The Skype dropped out. I can answer the second one. 64.2% of those responding, or 64.42% of the respondents were in support of the bid. What was the first question?
Oh no, that's important. To me, that is a clear community mandate. And if 1.6% of the people that didn't vote turned out to vote no, you'd still get a very handy yes vote there. The other one is the bid policy allows for exceptional circumstances. Would you agree that COVID-19 plus the community mandate that we've already received several times together amount to exceptional circumstances in that policy?
I certainly would. However, with these rates and policy things, there's a legal compliance element, and I'm wondering if one of our legal team, perhaps Katie, if she's on the call, is able to provide you with some additional advice on that.
Yeah, through the chair, it's Meredith Webb here. I'm just calling in on Katie's computer. We've been working with the CCO governance team and the local board in relation to this issue. The consultation document that originally went out specifically referred to the establishment of the bid program and the setting of the targeted rate occurring after a successful ballot, and defined successful ballot as including a return of more than 25% and a more than 50% positive response rate. In our view, in the circumstances where we have previously defined it in that manner, and given the wording of the policy, we would recommend going out and consulting again in relation to this.
So, Councillor Henderson, that's the legal advice. I'd be very reluctant actually to go against legal advice if we are in breach of legal compliance issues. Did you want to make any further comment on that?
Look, I'd respectfully just add my viewpoint that there is an exceptional circumstances clause in there to allow us to pass this amendment, and to me it's extremely clear that it is an exceptional circumstance. And honestly, I think we're being a little bit cautious, but yeah, there are different viewpoints about that. But that's me, and I understand that my fellow Waitakere councillor would like to chip in. I see they're on the chat.
Actually, I have a question.
If you'd like to make a comment at this point.
Sorry. Point of order, I've already put my name up to question, and that was prior to Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, and mine was prior to that.
I'm sorry, I see that, but I'd just like, if I may, with your indulgence, both Councillor Simpson and Councillor Mulholland, just dealing with this issue of the Central Park bid, if we can get the comments so we know whether or not we're going to include this suggested amendment. We've heard the desire by local councillors to do it. We've heard some legal advice that there are compliance issues. It would just make sense if I can take Councillor Cooper now on this particular topic and no other topic. So
it is on that topic, Your Worship, and it is a point.
Sorry, okay, Tracy, if you're on the same topic, I'm more than happy to take.
Absolutely. Now, I've been heavily involved in bids for quite some number of years, and I am involved in the West Auckland community. There are a number of bids here. I know some of the businesses, and I believe the first attempt at this did fail, and so I'm not going to be able to support this amendment due to the legality of it, and it is overlaying a proposed targeted rate. Now, whilst I've been a big supporter of bids and remain in that way, I have just had different general commentary prior to this about some being not happy about the process, and that is a general comment. I'm deeply concerned that we would go against the legal advice, and that it is overlaying a targeted rate at this particular time. And given the consultation has been out and has failed previously, I think that's a strong indicator as to the views and opinions. Now, whilst that may not be an opinion of the particular board, there are business people who have multiple businesses in that area and in the FO. I also think, from my years of experience in bid management, the 25%, and I was involved in policy at Minico when I worked there, actually, that is a very, very low threshold, because you are asking essentially businesses to pay. So I wouldn't be able to support this because I think it goes against the views and opinions of many of the people that have businesses or own properties in the area. And as I say, because I'm closely involved with RBA, which is in the FO, I have also had that feedback. So kia ora, and thank you for that opportunity, because it is specific, relevant, and we must follow process. And the 25% threshold is extremely low, from my opinion, and I'm still involved with bids. So I think that's expertise driven. Kia ora, thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Now, just double check, Councillor Simpson, your comments weren't on this particular issue?
No, they weren't, Your Worship.
Okay, well, with your indulgence, I'll just get Councillor Cooper to make a comment. I think if there's a legal compliance element to this, I think we've probably all agreed that we cannot breach legal compliance requirements. But Councillor Cooper, I'd like to hear from you first on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if you'll indulge me, this has been going on since before amalgamation. One vote frustrated, and in actual fact there is confusion with RBA, because an earlier attempt that didn't even get across the line to have a vote was that the Rosebank Association wanted to fold in all of Central Park Henderson, and we know that we can't do bids that include two boards. It has to be singular boards, and so that frustrated it, and a lot of people still wanted it, but at a pretty fraught meeting of the community, there was quite a lot of interference because it was not understood by the RBA and other proponents that you couldn't have a bid including two boards. You had to have it individually. So that was frustrated. Then they had another vote, but it actually failed because a lot of that confusion. And now we finally got to this point where Central Park Henderson is a very strong group now. There is no competition, and there should be no competition between Rosebank and Central Park, but some of that has happened, unfortunately, because of misunderstandings about how that a big West Auckland bid couldn't be set up. And so that's why I support this, because it is long needed, and particularly now because, you know, economically things are going to be really tough. We need a leadership model in that Central Park Henderson area. It has it in the form of the business association, but it needs that backup of a bid, and I am very worried about the economic future of this area without that. And I think that absolutely respect Councillor Mulholland's had a lot of experience in this area, but Councillor Henderson and I were very well involved in the earlier failure to even get it off the ground, and we understand the background and why it's been so confused and frustrated. And now the business community are really ready for this, and it's just a shame because of the interruption to consultation, that it didn't go well. So that's why I support it. Look, if it fails, it fails. But I mean, I think for Councillor Henderson and I to not support this would be letting down our community. I hope it can go through and that we can get past that, use the exceptional circumstances. I think it's quite critical. If we go back to consultation on this, it'll just die. People are so fatigued by the whole consultation, and it just all the hurdles it had. I think they just give up, and that would be a disaster. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cooper. Look, I understand Alistair Cameron is on the line with us, and Alistair, you've had some involvement. I'd really like some clear direction. I've listened carefully to Councillors Cooper and Henderson and understand the frustration and the problems. But you know, we're an organisation that sets rules, and therefore we can't be seen to break them. And if we've entered into an undertaking and consulted on that basis and have not met the standard, I don't know that we have much choice. But Alistair, are you able to comment on this? Maybe add to what Meredith has said.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And sorry, I missed the beginning of the discussion. So the bid policy does set a threshold of 25% of return votes to get the mandate to establish a bid. In the current case, there was clear evidence from Election Services, who undertook the ballot on behalf of the Business Association, that the voting turnout was impacted by COVID, and it got very close to that threshold. So when the local board considered whether to recommend striking, establishing the bid and recommending the striking of the targeted rate, they took those exceptional circumstances into consideration. However, just a belts and braces approach and the clear legal advice which was given to the local board at the time is that this should be included in further consultation with the emergency budget, just to make sure that that mandate is still there, and that the businesses and property owners are still comfortable in a post-COVID world. So,
well, you may have finished anyway. Are you still on the line with us?
Yeah, sorry, am I breaking up?
I lost you. It might just have been my yeah. So sorry, I didn't hear your last sentence, please.
So look, I think, you know, the clear legal advice is that for this process to be absolutely squeaky clean, we should go out and just consult as part of the emergency budget, just to keep council safe in terms of its decision-making process. We're making a decision which is contrary to the council policy, but falls within the exceptional circumstances allowed for within that policy. And I think we've got to be clear today that the decision today isn't whether to establish the bid and strike the targeted rate. It's just whether to consult on that as part of the emergency budget. So I think we just need to follow the legal advice here.
So just to clarify that, your view and that of our legal advisors is that we should not add the amendment and Central Park Henderson BID?
Yes.
Okay, and the alternative now would be, could you talk us through what the alternative is if we did not include this now? What would have to be done in order to do this according to our policy and to legal requirements?
The resolutions as written are what we work through with our legal team.
So is that including and Central Park Henderson?
No, the original resolution B is what we worked through with our legal team.
Okay.
Through the chair, if I could just note, Your Worship, the local board itself, when resolving to establish the bid program and recommend the setting of the targeted rate to the governing body, has noted that there will be further consultation on this through the emergency budget.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Look, in the circumstances, as the mover of the resolution, on the basis of that advice, I wouldn't be able to absorb that as part of the resolution, and it's really now up to councillors Cooper and Henderson. If notwithstanding the advice they've given, they want to add that as a separate amendment. So could I just have some further advice from you, Councillor Henderson, on whether you want to proceed or not?
Yeah, and I'll take some guidance from my Waitakere colleague, but for what it's worth, I feel it is important to proceed because we're enacting what the community want and have given us a mandate for. And really, this all turns on what you mean by exceptional circumstances. I note the advice and I respect the advice, but I'll also point out that, in my view, exceptional circumstances have easily been met. And so I feel very strongly that I want to keep the amendment in, but at the same time, I'll take guidance from my Waitakere colleague.
Councillor Cooper?
Thank you. I just had a question. Is it possible to put an F and consult on a Central Park Henderson bid, but do it in the process of this consultation and do a bit of targeted to the businesses to do it that way? I just really worry that this community will just be exhausted by this process and the whole thing will fall apart. And I feel very sad that we haven't got any other West Auckland support here, because this is just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of businesses, large, medium and small, that need some structure to get ahead. So yeah, I mean, it's up to you, Mr. Chair, to include it or not, but I'm just wondering if we can say, rather than include a targeted rate, or just consult on a Central Park Henderson bid, but in a kind of a modified way if that met because of the exceptional circumstances.
So I'll just ask Alistair and Meredith if they've got any comment on that. So that would then read and consult with.
And could I just, on the exceptional circumstances point first, we accept that this is exceptional circumstances. It is just the manner in which the policy has been drafted which makes us consider that it would be appropriate to undertake that further consultation. On the point about amending F, we wonder whether we could add, include a new targeted rate and Central Park Henderson bid subject to further engagement on this issue, or subject to further engagement.
Would that be separate from, because Warkworth don't need one, but yeah, it would be specific to Central Park. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I'd be happy with that. Would you?
I think.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll make this a separate, maybe a G, and G becomes H, so we don't confuse the targeted rate about one Warkworth.
Perfect.
Okay, I think we may have a solution to that then. So, and Sandra, you're still trying to get the right wording. I'll get Meredith just to repeat the wording there, please. Include a new targeted rate for Central Park Henderson BID, subject to further engagement.
That's right. Could be with affected businesses.
With affected businesses, okay. Okay, I'll just double check. The seconder of this resolution, I think, was Desley Simpson. Are you happy to accept that as part of the recommendations, Desley?
Well, I don't know that I'm seconding them yet. I've got a question, so you might want to get somebody
else. Okay. Sorry, I thought it was you that had seconded the recommendations. We didn't hear clearly who seconded the recommendation, so can somebody volunteer as the seconder, please?
I'll be brave, Mr. Chair. I will. Linda Cooper.
Okay, Councillor Cooper, thank you. Okay, let's. You're obviously happy with that, so we'll add that in the way that's been indicated, and I'll come back now to questions and Councillor Simpson.
Look, thanks, Your Worship. I've just got a question around a Roman numeral 2A and B. When we went out, there's no doubt when we went out for consultation, it was clear as to the response that was positive. But we went out with a consultation on 3.5% pre-COVID, and in taking on the response to both the waste-based service and the refuse rate, that was all based on that, and people knew the impact of that. We're now going out on 3.5 and 2.5, and I just want to know the legal issues around, we haven't, where do we explain what the impact is of those rates on 2.5? Look, I say that because, of course, Manukau City Council impact on 3.5 is 4.56 and Auckland City Council is 4.39. But my understanding from Andrew is we haven't got that information for 2.5, and somehow I think it should be referenced in the consultation document. And what this wording actually does is it takes it as we're going to do it. It's based on 3.5. We're going to do it. I just think that's a bit predetermined. Can I just seek some legal advice on that?
Andrew, would you or Meredith like to comment on that, please?
I won't comment on the legal advice, but I would note that the impact in dollar value and percentage terms is the same.
Okay. Does that satisfy you, Councillor, or would you like some comment from Meredith Webb from a legal perspective?
I just like the legal because, of course.
Okay. Let's see if Meredith has got a comment on that.
Through the chair, it's Katie Bexley here. So from a legal perspective, we don't see there as being any impediment to the council taking decisions on these matters that are before you today. The key thing from our perspective is that people are clear on what is within the scope of decisions to be made following any further consultation. And the consultation document will need to make it clear what decisions have already been taken and what is still on the table in terms of that further consultation. So if the councillors were to make a decision on these waste targeted rates today, the consultation document would make that clear, and then these figures would feed into the baseline budget that the consultation document would be based on.
So there's no further opportunity, even though this was all done pre-COVID and life was sweet and everything was good and everyone was happy probably with 3.5, or we saw the feedback on that. Everyone was happy with these rates. There's no legal reason why we need to, if we make a decision now, that's it. We're not ever going to look at this again in the emergency budget. Is that what you're saying? No legal reason to look at this again because we've already had the feedback on it. I just want to be 100% clear.
So our view is that that's correct. That there's no legal impediment to taking these decisions today. And as Andrew said, the reasons behind these decisions and the impacts are the same, even after the impact of COVID. However, if councillors did want to retain scope to revisit any of the decisions taken today, we would suggest taking a sort of soft approach to any further consultation on that so that the scope of consultation is really clear. But that could leave room for councillors to consider any further feedback on particular issues, and that would be open to the councillors to do that if they wished.
So if we were to follow that line that you just mentioned, what words would need to change in the resolution?
Katie, are you there? It's a deafening silence at the moment.
Sorry, my mic was muted. It's similar to the way that the Central Park Henderson bid has been dealt with there. We would suggest that if in relation to any specific matters that councillors wanted to leave room for considering further feedback, that there could be words added to the specific matters that the decisions are taken subject to consideration of any further feedback. And then that would be reflected in the consultation document to make that clear to people giving feedback.
Thank you. I'll think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, just double check, Councillor Mulholland, you've already made the comment that you wanted to before. That was in relation to the bid. You didn't have a separate comment?
Thank you, Your Worship. And the only reason I speak on this, because I've been an incredibly strong supporter of bids for nearly 20 years, and I was involved in leading the team actually at Waitakere when Henderson came about. So whilst I absolutely understand the comments of the other councillors that have spoken and put this up and understand it, I believe that it is a low threshold in the policy, that there isn't a clear mandate, that some of the feedback I have received, and yes, I'm well aware, Your Worship, of the scenario with RBA. I have been involved actually for quite some years myself in that process. I feel in this time of COVID, what we are doing is an overlay of a targeted rate on a business. And by the councillor commenting about community support, I would say that I would need to see evidence of that, because I would have to dispute that, because this is a business owner, a property owner, a targeted rate. They do have an association, and we should trust that group to work closely together. And if it has failed in the past, which it has, and it has failed again, I just am extremely concerned. And as someone who has been one of the biggest supporters of bids from many years back, working in Manukau, having established many bids in Manukau and Waitakere and involved, it just deeply concerns me that I won't be able to support this, because I feel it is our duty legally, and we are obliged to do the right thing, follow policy. And what we're essentially doing is asking people to pay an additional targeted rate for multiple years, or until it got voted out. So I've always been a big supporter of the bids, so that's why there are specific reasons. And if we vote for something when there is clear evidence against it, and then we're asking people to pay an additional targeted rate and a fee when there is already an organisation that should be trusted to work together to garner support, then I would say that that goes against the grain of doing the right thing. So, big supporter, perhaps we could give them a grant. That's another option, which I can't see it happening now, but that could be another option, Your Worship, to assist or help out, or perhaps AT could undertake some additional work. So I thank you very much for the opportunity. I certainly understand the circumstances, and I'm a supporter of bids and that work, but in this case, I wouldn't be able to support that. But I'm happy to answer any of your questions, Your Worship, or of others on any other reasoning. Kia ora, thank you.
Thank you. If necessary, we can take, if there's a divided view on this, we'll take G as a separate vote, when we can do that by division. Councillor Walker, I think you've got a question on the same question, and maybe Councillor Collins as well. So let's just try and deal with this item first, and then I'll come back. I've got Councillor Watson and Dalton. Yes, Councillor Walker, I can hear you fine. Please go ahead.
Okay, so I've got, I share the concerns that Councillor Mulholland is raising. I've got a concern around the wording in G, which to me is rather vague. So, subject to further engagement with affected businesses. Which affected businesses? What is the nature of the engagement? Is this going to be compliant with policy? I just have a real concern that wording is insufficiently accurate. We have had a process. That process to date has failed. So I'm making the assumption that subject to further engagement is is actually following the correct process. If that is not the case, and there is some difference here, then the wording should reflect that, and we should all know that.
Okay, my understanding from Katie is that that would be legally compliant with the wording that it has at the moment, but there will be an opportunity to vote on G if you have concerns about that, to not support it if that's your view. Okay, I think Councillor Collins, your question's been asked already.
It is still unclear.
What I'm working on, Councillor Walker, is that our legal advisors have said that this would be compliant with the legal requirements on us. And affected businesses, I guess they are any businesses that might be affected by the establishment of the bid. Okay, I'll come back now to Councillor Watson. Question or comment?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. No, it's actually it's not on this specific.
No, that's okay. Well, on whatever, on the whole paper.
Okay, so I'm just really wanting to see what on the screen what is D and E, the recommendations. I can't see it. So if you could just scroll up.
Oh, okay. Is that okay? Can you see that now?
Yes. So let me just have a look. Okay, so you know, in terms of E, officers were going to see you, E2, E1 in fact, and along similar lines to the advice that's just been given, add subject to consideration of any further feedback received in this issue. Now that doesn't appear there. I don't want to go into the whole convoluted sequence of events that's arisen to that, but that's what I was assured was going to be included, that phrase, which has just been mentioned now by one of the officers to deal with a particular consultation issue that has occurred in Whenuapai. Now, so I really want to know why that hasn't been included, as was indicated yesterday, without having to go into a detailed recounting of what led to that. It's quite a simple, straightforward, pragmatic adjustment that allows people to feedback in the manner they were assured that they were going to be by council officers, and for that decision then to be subject to consideration of that feedback. So the same phrase that was just mentioned previously.
Okay, so your suggestion is that add to E2, or no, E1 I think it is subject, or sorry, is this the whole change that you're looking for?
Sorry, yeah, so that's it down the bottom there, Mr. Mayor. So is that going to be included then? That's already yeah.
Can I have some comment from Andrew Duncan on that, please?
I understand that just prior to the decision to consider these issues now rather than in July, there was advice that they might be included, that this might be included again in the emergency budget consultation, and then subsequently the council's made a decision to make these decisions now. That one ratepayer group who had already provided a submission and been heard at a local board meeting is concerned that they've missed out on that further opportunity they thought they were going to have.
Excuse me one second, Andrew. There are people, somebody's got their mic on and there's a lot of background noise. Can you please make sure when you're not speaking you've got your mic off for the convenience of everybody else? Andrew, please continue.
Yes, I will. So did you hear that? Everyone hear what I just said?
Oh, okay.
So as one ratepayer had been advised they might have a further opportunity to speak just before the decision to have their views considered in further consultation, just before the decision was made to consider these issues at this meeting, and they're disappointed they wouldn't have had that. although they had already made a submission and been heard by the local board on this issue, is my understanding.
No, there's actually a little bit more to it than that, Mr. Mayor, but as I said, that was assurance that was given to me yesterday to deal with this circumstance that has arisen, that I'm happy to talk to if you want me to, but the officers told me that there was no problem in adding that phrase there that would meet the demands of the Ratepayers Association and their community. It's not one ratepayer, it's an entire Ratepayers Association and the community they represent. So it's a little bit more than just one person. And there is a background of events and statements, all detailed, that go to council providing that assurance to them. Now, as I said, I don't want to litigate that, but I will do if I have to, justify that in that way. But that assurance was given to me yesterday that this would happen without too much fuss. So I'm just curious as to why now it hasn't appeared in the recommendations as promised.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Look, I'm sorry, I wasn't privy to any discussion or assurance that's given, but if I can just maybe put to Andrew again, is there what if any problem would there be with the addition of that clause under E2? It would obviously, it would then mean that you would have the further opportunity by this group to make submissions if for some reason, and I don't know what the reason might have been, they weren't able to do so in the first instance.
That wouldn't create a major issue.
Okay, so
you'll be able to consider their submission again at the decision in the middle of July.
Okay, again, I'll ask my seconder, but are you happy with the inclusion of that clause under E2, Councillor Simpson?
I'm not your seconder.
Councillor Cooper, sorry. Councillor, still got that in mind. Councillor Cooper?
My question was, I sort of, it feels a bit, I don't quite, it doesn't feel very clear from Councillor Watson. I thought that everybody had consultation and we've received back the information. That's why I don't understand why it needed further consultation. That was I don't understand.
Okay, perhaps if
we've actually
Councillor
had the
Watson...
consultation back and the figures from Upper Harbour and Henderson Massey as well as Waitakere. Okay,
I'll just give Councillor Watson another chance to answer that, and then if you weren't wishing to add that, then we would need to make that an amendment.
Yeah, okay, and I'll be happy to do that. So just briefly, we're talking about the Whenuapai Ratepayers Association, and there's been a sequence of events concerning this proposal to end the sewage pump out and targeted rate. Auckland Council, during the period of consultation, counselled the public community meeting between the council and Whenuapai community. They were then unable to facilitate a public video conference that was scheduled to appear on the community Facebook page. The community were then unable to attend the Upper Harbour Local Board Forum to provide feedback. They've requested further information from the council regarding all this, which has not been provided, and there is real questions over the extent to which the communications in the form of the documentation got out to all affected parties. So there is a very strong contention that large numbers of people actually missed out getting the documentation required to submit on that. And this was all conveyed to council and to me way back at the start of April, at which point I, as the ward councillor, wrote to relevant council officers saying this is the situation, there is going to be a second round of consultation. Is it going to be possible for this group to be consulted upon in that round of consultation? And the response came back from council at that point was yes, they would be able to feed back into this emergency budget consultation, and that feedback will be considered at that point. So at that stage, and that was mid-April, I told them this was a council decision, that they would be able to submit, it would be considered, and they have proceeded on that basis. So subsequent to that, then there was, this recommendation, which of course essentially removed that assurance that had been given to them both by me as the councillor and by council officers. So as a means round this...
I'm comfortable, Councillor Watson, that's fine, as long as our Healthy Waters, usually Andrew Chin goes and does this, if he's available to do that really good information sharing, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, so it's a pragmatic compromise that Mr. Duncan said is he's fine with, Mr. Mayor, so I think, it's not it doesn't need to be made into a big issue.
No, that's fine. Look, I think that explanation is helpful. If that assurance was given, then we should honour the assurance. I mean, my own view on it is very clear about not subsidising the sewage pump out. But if that assurance was given about further consultation, then both by yourself and by officers, then I think we should honour that. I have a further question about that from Councillor Henderson. I see you've just withdrawn that. Okay, so with the agreement of the seconder, that's now incorporated in the recommendations. Right, Councillor Dalton, I think we come to next.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I just want to go back up to the targeted rates, A and B, and my questions were somewhat answered. Councillor Simpson had asked them, and we got some advice on it. So the legal advice is that we don't need to go back out and consult, and I think the reasoning for that is because the impacts are the same. But the impacts are the same, but the financial environment is very different now for the ratepayers. Now, I think it was Katie that said that there would be something in the consultation material, and I just want to sort of tease out what that is, because it's not about the legality of it. The legality, it sounds like it's been covered. I support the fees and charges. I know they're necessary to deliver the services that we need to deliver, but I want to make sure that we're transparent. And I want to just have a bit of a discussion as to whether that is about the residents having another chance to have a say, or whether providing the information on the already agreed rates is enough, and what that looks like in the consultation document. So it's more of a ethical, I'm not saying anyone around the table is unethical, but it's more of a it's transparency. That is what I'm looking for, and that the ratepayers truly understand what we are going to be putting into the budget when we go into it in July. So I think my question at the end of all of that is, what does the information look like that is going in the consultation document? And do councillors feel that we need to be asking the question again, or was the pre-COVID consultation enough from a transparency perspective?
Andrew, have you any comment that you'd like to make on that?
I understand that the consultation document will include reference to the decisions that have been already been made, and clearly these are the ones that would, I assume, would headline that. So it'll be clear to people the decisions that you've made about the base and waste management rate and the refuse rate. In terms of the effect on the ratepayers, that remains relatively similar whether we fund it from the general rate or the targeted rate. They're pretty close in terms of their impact.
Perhaps if I can just ask another question on that, Andrew. Except, as Councillor Dalton has said, the impacts are the same, the financial environment is different, but there was, I think, a very clear majority, 2/3 in favour of both A and B and a quarter opposed. But if we weren't to proceed in the way recommended, then we'd simply be putting overall rates up to meet those costs. And wasn't this a question of equity between firstly, in regard to Auckland City and Manukau, that those of us living in the old legacy areas would, in the event of a general rate going up, have our rate collection subsidised by those living in the other legacy areas. Wasn't that the issue?
Yes, there'd be a bit of that. Plus, if we put these increases through the general rate, we'd end up shifting another $4 million of rates onto businesses. We would be charging some of this cost to 37,000 ratepayers who don't receive the service, and the difference will probably be about, instead of a 1% increase in the sort of Auckland Manukau area, it'll still be 0.75. So we're talking a move of 10 to 20 cents a week between the two options in those areas, and it would remain pretty similar, a little bit more elsewhere.
Okay, I think that's very clear as an answer. Now, I don't think I have any further questions indicated or comments. So what I'll... I'm sorry?
There was, Your Worship, myself.
Oh, Alf, I'm sorry, I missed you there. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's in regards to G, and the question is, the recommendation is to amend. Now, what process will be followed to go out to the Central Park Henderson bid area? Is it the same process that they have done previously? Because when I read G, it straight away I'll be looking at include a new targeted rate for the Central Henderson bid. That'll be the first thing that'll be catching my mind. So, Andrew, is the process that has been put out previously going to be the same process when it goes out to further engagement?
So we would include reference to it in the consultation document, and we've already written letters to go to all the members of the Business Association asking them to let us know their views. So we're already drafted and ready to go with that, encouraging them to respond. And we'd go to the Business Association as well, obviously, and get them to work with their members.
So would that include the fact that we've made a decision to include it as a new targeted rate, subject to the, would that wording be included, or would you just use the same process that you have already undertaken?
Good point. I suppose we would make reference to the decision that the council's made and the council's desire to get their feedback before they make a final decision.
So would that, okay, I'm just sort of looking at preempting and telling the bid, the Central Park Henderson shops, businesses there, saying, look, council's already made, at this stage are approving the new targeted rate, what do you think? And preempting an answer,
I think,
which is predetermined.
I think, Councillor Filipaina, we would include it subject to the feedback we got from them. So it's a conditional improvement. It's not, we're going to do this anyway, but tell us what you think. It's, we're going to do this provided there is support for it, is how I would read it.
Yeah, I just hope that it's clear. The communication is clear to those businesses, Your Worship. So
I agree entirely. Yeah, and I think that needs to be correct. I've got further questions or comments. Councillor Simpson.
Oh, wait, take the questions first, Your Worship, please.
Okay, Councillor Henderson, a question.
Sorry, thanks for your indulgence. And following on from Councillor Filipaina's excellent question, who approves it after the feedback's actually come in? And just to point out that this won't be the first time the businesses have heard about this, that this has been, I don't know, 10 years plus in the making. So who says, yep, okay, that's the feedback, tick? Is it us or the local board?
I would assume.
Yeah, through the chair, it's Meredith Webb here. It'll come back to a governing body. At this stage, the local board has approved the establishment of the bid program. So the next step is for the targeted rate to be set. So the way that the engagement is happening is really outlining clearly and openly that our view is that despite the 25% threshold not being reached, we consider that there are exceptional circumstances and it's appropriate to proceed on. And on that basis, we've taken this decision in principle, subject to obtaining further views from those affected businesses. So that's the manner in which we would be presenting it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that helps clarify. Councillor Sayers, also a question.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Just going back to the paper item 14, which talks about the other fees. I'm just bringing it up myself. There's a bullet point there just talking about changes to some of the consent fees and deposits to align with actual costs and to improve customer experience. So just to gain some clarification around that, obviously that's a financial implication, but in terms of the customer experience and the time, the 20 days that we usually look at for processing a consent, could I just gain some reassurance that that hasn't been extended or would be extended, or will it be staying the same, or we've been trying to shorten that as part of this proposal? The main driver for my question, Worship, is just feedback to the industry that we've moved from 20 days to 40 days over this COVID period, which I wasn't aware of as a councillor. So I just want to gain some reassurance that that there aren't being changes made to that 20 days processing time, and any further information we might gain around that concern.
So the proposed changes to these fees don't change those times. They're about getting the deposits closer to what people will actually end up paying is one of the key things. I'll ask Kevin Smith if he's available to answer about the time issue as well.
Are you there, Kevin?
Yes, through the chair. The time frame extension that you're talking about is when an application is not being worked on during that close down period. So as Andrew indicated, we don't anticipate there being any actual change in the actual charges to customers. It's just about getting that deposit at a more appropriate level so they know up front what the likely charge will be.
Okay, Your Worship, maybe officers could come back to me offline if it's easy for them to check, but obviously my main concern is around current changes to timelines, and therefore getting projects going, and I hope we're not holding it up accidentally internally, Your Worship. That's the angle I'm coming from.
Okay, understand that. I think it's clear that this proposal doesn't do in itself anything about timelines. The timeline was to do with the lockdown period. Perhaps if you talk directly to Kevin Smith, if there's any residual problems you've got with that councillor, you may be able to sort that out directly. Okay, so we come back to Councillor Simpson. I think the final request for...
Look, it was just a comment. Look, I'm probably on a hiding to nothing. It's not that I don't agree with the feedback and the targeted rates. I just think we're in a new world post-COVID. And I suppose if A and B had, subject to consideration of any further feedback, it's not asking for reconsult. It's just making people aware in the consultation document that those decisions had been made. That's all I'm saying. I'm chair of your finance committee, Your Worship. I want to be as open and transparent as possible. We consulted on extra charges well before COVID-19, and just ethically, it's not right to me to absolutely approve them without just stating it somewhere in the consultation material. So if you could indulge my ethics and add subject to consideration of any further feedback, I'd be very grateful. If you're not happy to do that, I will abstain from the vote on those two issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Look, I'm more than satisfied that that people have had a chance to be consulted, but I'm not averse to people being able to, we won't have a separate consultation line on those issues yet again, But if we've got reference to that in the consultation document, and then people are able to make any comment, as in all of our normal consultation documents, I think we could do it that way. Andrew, do you have a difficulty with that?
I don't have if the councillors wish to, certainly reference to these will be included in the consultation document.
Yep.
If it's subject to consideration of further feedback, and that's giving you the opportunity to adjust these, it just obviously adds another layer to the decision-making complexity you'll have to address in July. And so it's
Well, sorry, what I was suggesting is that my understanding is that reference will be made in the consultation document to this, but not with a separate line to reconsult on what we've already consulted. But people that did have a concern with that would have the ability to comment within the general comment section.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, okay. No, I think we might have, if you're happy with that, Councillor Simpson.
I really appreciate that. So, Sandra, that would go with A and B. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment as a seconder?
Yep,
I understand absolutely, Councillor Simpson's. It's really important to be transparent. I'm just wondering, given Andrew's comments about that if it could well be a whole another rejig if it was changed again, the end is it? It's not so much further feedback, but the concern was that it was clearly indicated to our public that all of these had been consulted on before. Here it is, rather than another, because this to me opens up a whole another round of consultation. That was my concern, that it becomes subject to it, rather than making sure people are clearly told, yes, we've consulted on this, so here it is, but now we've got some other things, very important things to consult on. That's I'm very worried about this being completely opened up again in terms of
well, you're included in your targeted rate.
Sorry, through the chair, please.
I get what you're saying. I was just listening to what Andrew said, because this goes to a budget rejig if we change it. But I guess it's fine if it goes across the line. Fine. I just don't know how we're going to handle it at the other end after Andrew's comments. And given we all know how pressurised this is with the finance staff.
Yeah, I'll reiterate my comment and just.
Subject to further consideration, that is a resolution that would allow for further consideration, which is slightly different from showing that we're still open to listen, which is...
Okay, I've got a couple of other comments on this. Let's, Councillor Collins first. Councillor Collins, are you on the line with us? Okay, I'll go to Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'm grateful for what Councillor Simpson has raised. I accept that we're not starting again in relation to all of this, but it is quite important.
I'm sorry, Councillor Newman, we've lost you for the moment. You're probably still there, so...
Yep, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yep.
Yep. Look, I just think it's quite important that we do in the consultation reflect that, yes, we've discussed this matter with you previously. Well, we've raised this issue for consultation. That was pre-COVID-19. We are looking to proceed with this, but it will be important for those of us in the areas affected to point out that the budget scenarios that we are consulting on, these in effect deliver about a 1% more on top of the scenarios included, which will be a cost on our ratepayers. And that is something that we need to ensure that we spell out very clearly, because I am sure that people will want to comment on that and provide feedback. We should welcome that, and we should be as clear as we can that that is the actual impact on them. It is more than just a nominal rate increase, if that's what we're going to do, but this will be on top of that, and it will have a material impact. So if that is something that we can transparently reflect and provide for comment from our community, yeah, there'll be some hard feedback, I'm sure, but it is better that we spell that out because I think that transparency at this time is really important.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Collins, I can assure you we haven't muted your phone at this end. Can you take your call now?
Can you hear me now, Mayor?
I can hear you perfectly. Thank you,
brilliant.
Councillor.
Thank you. Thanks, HQ as well. Hey, look, I just wanted to say that I endorse the comments in the suggested amendment that's been put forward by Councillor Simpson. I haven't had the chance to discuss this with Councillor Filipina, but both the local boards of Otara Papatoetoe and Mangere Otahuhu came back with pretty convincing results on that original piece of consultation, which showed a general support for the increase in the targeted rates. But further to that, when we discussed it some more, both Chair Foley and Chair Lemonga said to me that they completely understood and they were aware that often our communities just kind of take on the extra cost. So they understood that completely. But they did say if there was the opportunity for people to offer more feedback, then that would be considered as well. And so I don't think this is going to, I personally do not believe that this is going to change the position of the two local boards that I've referred to. But what it does do is it gives people the opportunity, granted the way it's worded, just for further consideration to be made. So I'm happy for it as it stands, because I think it's an opportunity just to see if people have changed their minds, let's hear about it. I'm not personally of the view that there'll be a major shift out these ways, but there could be, but I just think that I'm happy for it to go ahead. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. So the wording is there, and I've indicated what my understanding of that wording is, and that's been confirmed by Andrew Duncan. So I have no other...
Your Worship, it needs to be for B as well.
Yeah, it needs to be consistent with B. I've just mentioned that to Sandra, and she's about to make that change. We come now to the vote. What I'm going to suggest... Councillor Councillor Filipina.
Yeah, sorry, I put it in the side column, so I don't know what's happened with the comment.
No, it has come up, but I'm sometimes focusing on what's happening on the screen and not on the sidebar. So, Councillor Filipina, the call's yours.
Just very shortly, very short. I agree with Councillor Collins, but I just wanted to again find out that are we going to do it, because Andrew said that there's a difference with what the further feedback is instead of what you're indicating, Your Worship. I just wanted to end up having and ensuring that it's not going to be separately in our documentation in regards to A and B, but it just offers up for further comment that you referred to, Your Worship.
Thanks, Councillor. Your understanding is right. There won't be a separate provision to revisit the whole thing. It will be mentioned in the consultation that these have been consulted on and agreed to, but that will be anybody that wants to comment on that, if they believe that the circumstances have changed, will be able to do in the general comment section.
Through you, Chair, it's Kate Bexley here. I wonder if I can just jump in briefly, just on that wording. The way we envisage that flowing through into the consultation document is, as you say, it won't necessarily be included as a specific issue in the consultation document, but where the consultation document outlines what decisions have been taken in relation to the first round of feedback, it will there identify that these particular matters have been agreed in principle, subject to consideration of any further feedback, and that then leaves it open to you as decision makers following that second round of feedback to revisit any decisions if you consider that's appropriate in light of any further feedback that is received on those issues.
Thank you, Katie. I think that's very clear now. What I'd like to do is take the vote, but there's been a request for a division on G. So what I'm suggesting, subject to any view expressed by councillors, is to take everything other than A, G on the voices and then take G on a division. But if there's a request for a division overall, I would obviously accept that.
Can I just ask one more question? Sorry. About G.
Yep. Okay, G, one more question.
Is it true that Henderson is the only town centre in Auckland without a bid?
Pretty much.
Oh, Skype's not happy today, it's dropping everybody.
Yeah, everybody's gone again.
Just did it again to me.
I don't know what's causing this. So we'll just wait till everybody's back online, because this is a pretty important part of the meeting. It's where we're going to take a vote. So I just want to make sure that everybody is back. In fact, I may even have to do a roll call to double check that, given that we are about to take a vote.
Sorry, I missed the answer to that question from Councillor Simpson as well.
Yeah, the answer I saw in a sidebar comment, I think from Councillor Dalton, is that there are others that are in that situation. That Takanini doesn't have a bid, and Clendon doesn't have a bid, and Penrose, according to Councillor Bartley, doesn't have a bid.
I think we need to distinguish Metro Centre rather than Town Centre.
Anyway, I'm not sure that is critical to the vote that we're going to take. It's a point of information, really. Look, I'd better do a roll call first, otherwise I'm in danger of not.
Chairman, point of order.
Yeah, point of order. Councillor Casey.
I'm a wee bit lost as to any changes to the recommendations as I have them before me in the document. That's a wee problem because I can't see.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll get them put up on screen again, because I don't have them written on in a hard copy, and I'll go through that while we're just waiting to see that everybody's joined back in. So, Sandra, if I can get you to put that back on screen, and I'll just walk you through them, Councillor.
Thank you.
So, sorry, it's just taking a little while to do this. While we're getting that back on screen, maybe I can just do a roll call and check that everybody is here. Deputy Mayor Cashmore?
Yes, sir.
Josephine Bartley?
Yes, I'm here.
Kathy is there. Efeso Collins?
Yes, sir.
Pippa Coombe?
Yes, I'm here.
Linda Cooper? Just double checking. Is Linda Cooper on the line? Okay, we'll just have to wait for Linda to get back on. Angela Dalton?
Yes, I'm here.
Chris Darby?
I'm here.
Alf Filipina?
Present, Headmaster.
Chris Fletcher?
Present.
Shane Henderson?
Kia ora.
Richard Hills?
Hi, I'm here.
Mook Honek?
Oh, kia ora, Your Worship. He's had trouble all day, so I've let him go.
Okay, so that's fine. I'll get you to speak for the IMSB, all on your own. Tracy Mulholland? We got Tracy on the line? No. Daniel Newman? Don't appear to have Daniel there either. Greg Sayers? Desley Simpson? No, we have a problem here. Sharon Stewart, I think I've seen. Yep, you're back. David Typley, I've heard from. Wayne Walker. John Watson.
Back on, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And Paul Young.
Yes, I'm here, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we've got a problem here because I've got 6 councillors missing. So 5 now. So while we're waiting for the other councillors to come back on, if I go through with Councillor Casey, who's on the phone and can't see the screen, the changes are as follows.
I've just been sent the amendments by Sandra.
Okay, you've got them. That's fine. That saves me the problem. Now let's just double check. Sandra, have we still got councillors missing? So Linda, you're back. Councillor Walker's back. Okay, I'll just check the other 4. Councillor Mulholland, are you on the line with us? Councillor Newman?
Yes, hello.
Thank you. Councillor Sayers? And Councillor Simpson?
Have you got me, Mr. Mayor? Councillor Sayers?
I got you now. And Councillor Simpson? Desley, are you on the line with us? Okay. I'm just going to suggest we take a break at this point. We are about to vote. Every councillor needs to be on, and the failure of technology shouldn't be a reason why people can't cast their vote. So I'll just double check before we take that break.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just a quick point of order. If you can hear me.
Okay, that's Councillor Henderson.
Yes, thank you. Sorry to hog the mic, as it were. I understand that we're taking a division on G, which is fine. I just want clarity on if that is voted down, what happens to the targeted rate itself? Because that's the whole thing in there.
If it's voted down, then we have not approved the targeted rate.
Okay.
If it's voted down, you could still go with B.
Sorry, B being, Andrew, can you? Oh, okay. Sorry, yeah, you're quite right, Andrew. Under Councillor Henderson, under B, it's agreed to consult further on the establishment of the Central Park Henderson bid and the associated targeted rate, but there will be no targeted rate approved if G is voted down. And if G is voted up, there will be a targeted rate subject to the further engagement demonstrating positive support for that at the level required.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I think we're still missing Councillor Mulholland and Councillor Simpson are both missing. Desley, you're on now?
I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, look, I'm just going to get a message sent through to Tracy Mulholland. Can I suggest we just take a 5-minute break now and we'll come back? So don't hang up. Hold in there. Take the chance to make a cup of tea, and we'll be back with you in let's make it 4 minutes past midday, just to be precise. Okay, thank you. your screen. So, oh, sorry, Wayne may not be with us. Wayne, are you? Just waiting for Councillor Walker.
Your Worship, just
Can you hear me?
Can I have a question of clarification?
Can you hear me, Phil?
Yep, sorry, I'll just deal. Yes, we've got you, Councillor Walker and Councillor Filipaina. Just before we take the vote, clarification.
So I'm on phone, but not Skype.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Filipaina, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, I just the question of clarification with G. If G doesn't pass, did you say that we then revert back to B as we had in the original recommendations, and then we end up going back to the others, that H becomes G? Is that what you?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. If G is to fail, then I would consider that B. Well, I'd probably have to actually move that B be incorporated. The old B be reincorporated is the way I think I'll do that. Okay, so at the moment, councillors, we're voting on the voices on everything other than AG. So I'll put the recommendation excluding G. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. Declare that carried. I'll now put G separately, and should that fail, I will then move to reinstate the original B, which is to agree to consult further on the establishment of the bid and the associated targeted rate. So I'll ask Sandra now to call a division on G.
Councillors, you are voting on clause A to G as it is on the screen in front of you. Can you be clear with your responses, please? Mayor Goff.
Aye.
Councillor Bartley.
Sorry, can you please clarify? I thought this was just about G.
Yeah, this is a division on G. Include a new targeted rate for Central Park Henderson bid, subject to further engagement with affected businesses.
Yeah, sorry, it's because she said A to G. That's why I thought we were doing.
No, A Roman numeral 2.
A to G.
G.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'm going to abstain. I'm sorry, Shane and Linda. I want to support you guys, but I don't know enough about it.
Thank you. Abstention.
Councillor Casey. I'll come back to Councillor Casey.
She might need a manual unmute.
She'll be by telephone.
She is. Councillor Casey?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Deputy Mayor Cashmore.
Aye.
Councillor Collins.
Abstention.
Thank you. Councillor Coombe.
Aye.
Councillor Cooper.
For.
Councillor Dalton.
Against.
Councillor Darby.
For.
Councillor Filipaina.
For.
Councillor Fletcher.
Against.
Councillor Henderson.
Aye.
Councillor Hills.
Aye.
Councillor Mulholland.
Against.
Councillor Newman.
No.
Councillor Sayers.
No.
Councillor Simpson.
Abstain.
Councillor Stewart.
No.
IMSB Chair Taipere.
Abstain.
Councillor Walker?
No.
Thank you. Councillor Watson?
Abstain.
Councillor Young?
Abstain.
So that was carried 9 votes to 7 with 6 abstentions.
Thank you very much, councillors. So that's carried. Just to repeat, 9 votes to 7 with 6 abstentions.